You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. You know, there has been a common, in the United States in particular, tragically, I think, there's a common misperception that capitalism and democracy are the same thing. The Chinese, the Singaporeans, if that's what they call it, Singaporeans, whatever they call themselves, certainly have given a lie to this over the years. Communist China is a brutal communist dictatorship, and yet they are some of the world's most ruthless and efficient capitalists in many ways. The same with Singapore. So the question, and similarly, you see some of the Northern European countries doing very well, thank you very much, having no bank crises. Unemployment never, during this last recession, never went above 5.6% in Germany, for example. And yet they have they're capitalists, but they have highly regulated capitalism. So the question Steve Forbes is asking, along with Elizabeth Ames, in his new book, How Capitalism Will Save Us, subtitled, Why Free People and Free Markets Are the Best Answer in Today's Economy. The question, will capitalism save us? Steve Forbes, welcome to the show.
Hello?
Hey, Steve, you're on the air.
Yeah, we were off for a second. How are you?
I am well, and I hope you are as well.
Doing fine, thank you.
You, of course, the chairman, CEO of Forbes magazine, Forbes.com, the author of the new book, How Capitalism Will Save Us, Why Free People and Free Markets Are the Best Answer in Today's Economy. And here's what I don't get. For example, on page 179 of your book, you talk about without the Fed flooding the banking system with too much money, the housing bubble could never have reached the size it did. You said if the SEC had not repealed the uptick rule in July of 2007, much of the unprecedented volatility would have been avoided. That doesn't sound to me like free markets or laissez-faire capitalism. That sounds like you're calling for more regulation.
Well, this caricature that you either have suffocating government regulation or anarchy is preposterous. We quote Friedrich von Hayek, the great economist, who said you have to have sensible rules of the road, whether it's preventing fraud, promoting transparency, enforcing contracts, not to mention security and the like. Talking about rules of the road, you don't allow people to go 100 miles an hour in a school zone. You're supposed to turn your indicator on before you make a turn. But that's very different from, say, the government telling you what to drive, where to drive, and when to drive. So Madison was right. We are not angels, so you do need government, but you need sensible rules, not ones where the government tries to do what free people can do in free markets.
So then you're suggesting that laissez-faire capitalism, unrestricted, unregulated predatory capitalism, the kind of capitalism Adam Smith warned us against in 1776 from Wealth of Nations, isn't what's going to save us, that regulated capitalism is going to save us?
Well, again, you have to find regulations, Bill Clinton might say, but you do have to have sensible rules there. But again, it's one thing to have a genuine free enterprise in healthcare, which we don't have. We have a hybrid system today, very different from, say, the government trying to run the healthcare system.
In your book, on page 130, you ask the question: does society really need rich people? And your answer is yes. Experiences of nations that have destroyed their merchant class illustrate the importance of wealth builders in an economy. First of all, historically, the merchant class has been the middle class, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. In Dickens's famous story, Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge was part of the very small middle class in England at the time. The largest class, of course, was the working poor, the Bob Cratchits. Never really even discussed the truly rich, people like yourself, the lords who control the British economy. How can you conflate the merchant class with truly rich people, A? B, how do you reconcile that with the fact that we didn't have anybody worth, in today's dollars, over $1 million in the United States after the Revolutionary War for almost 20 years? And C, all the research that indicates, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with James Wilkerson's brilliant books on this topic and all the research that he's done, that the more disparate, the wider the separation between rich and poor in a country, the more disparate wealth is in a country, the worse all social indicators become.
Well, in terms of going back to the American Revolution, we were a largely agrarian nation in those days. And the thing about free markets is that you create wealth, create opportunities, as Abraham Lincoln put it, to improve one's lot in life. And as for terms of mobility, in terms of people, the fifth quintile or whatever phrase you want to use.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is that numerous studies indicate that in the United States, at least, you have extraordinary mobility.
Actually, the United States, according to the United Nations, is among the developed nations of the world the least economically mobile society in the world right now, and has been by and large since 2003.
The UN, like so much of its alleged studies, whether it's climate change and the like, has much to be desired. I'll give you a study that the IRS did based on actual tax returns filed from the mid-'90s to the mid-part of the last decade, tens of thousands, found that those who began the period in the lowest quintile, the majority of them had gone up at least one or two quintiles. Almost all of them had seen rises in their incomes.
As a consequence of inflation?
It is, however you want to define it.
But, inflation-adjusted dollars, workers in America today are actually making less than they were in 1980. How can that be true?
Well, if you think American worker today is worse off than he or she was in 1980, I would suggest you take your blinders off.
No, by using IRS data, you're using household data as opposed to individual worker data. The IRS data, what you're quoting is households, not individual workers. It takes two workers in a household now to maintain the same standard of living that one person in a household could in 1980.
A person today has a higher standard of living than that person had in 1980, whether it's in terms of array of services and products, whether it's in terms of the car you buy, in terms of the quality of the health care you get. To say that we're nowhere better off than 1980, you just have to look around you.
Then why is it that
one of the reasons why we need genuine health care reform is that more and more of today's pay packages include health care. In terms of then that health care is because we don't have true free enterprise. The cost of health care is rising far faster than it should if you had true free enterprise.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean, yeah?
Well, no. I disagree with your premise. I don't think that what you're arguing for. I'm assuming
a greater part of incomes. One of the is health care, and the reason is because we don't have true free enterprise, which brings about productivity.
So are you suggesting that what we should do is enforce the Sherman Act and break up these large companies, or that we should do away with the antitrust exemptions?
I'll tell you some of the things we should do. We should have true competition in the insurance industry. Why not have nationwide competition? I live in the state of New Jersey, where we have wacky regulations on health care. I can get a virtually similar policy in neighboring Pennsylvania at half the price that I have to pay in New Jersey. Why shouldn't I be able to buy that policy if I choose?
Because the health insurance companies will then do the same thing that when we did that with credit cards, and South Dakota had passed the least restrictive regulations on credit card issuers, allowing them to gouge consumers. All of a sudden, all the credit card companies went to South Dakota. The exact same thing would happen with the insurance industry. That's why.
No, a thing called competition you'd get in health care, and you'd have in health care, which you see in other areas where people try to find more and more ways to make things more and more.
How are you going to prevent monopolies from emerging? We have about a half a minute.
Because you have competition. Competition is the best upender.
But the credit card companies,
as we cited in the 1960s, IBM, they even filed an antitrust suit. What did IBM? What did them in from their monopoly? Was not alleged monopoly, was not the government. It was free enterprise, first with mini computers and then with personal computers.
Well, it was the failure to see the direction the market was moving. I won't disagree with you on that. Steve Forbes, his new book, How Capitalism Will Save Us, Why Free People and Free Markets Are the Best Answer in Today's Economy, website Forbes.com. Thanks for dropping by, Steve.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.